Welcome to Chopping with Fire, where we bring you relevant experts in the topics of business, entrepreneurship, self-development, and of course, smart investments. Nominated by the People's Podcast Awards in 2022 and 2023 as one of the top business podcasts. Hosted by owner, doctor, and content creator Dustin Steffey. We are blessed to have our podcast in the top 50, paving the way in 5 major countries and counting, as well as money raised for 2 amazing causes, cystic fibrosis and of course the Boys and Girls Club. With that being said, and without further ado, let's chop it up. Welcome to another episode of Chopping with Fire. I have on with me Fern Chan. Fern, how are you?
Hi, I am wonderful this morning. I'm calling in from a rainy New York City, but otherwise smashing.
Well, I have nothing crazy to say to you about where I'm at. I'm in the desert of Fernley, Nevada, so not too much fun here.
I'll take some dry air. When it's just wet and soggy, I'll take some dry air.
It's good if you like a little bit of country and like back roads and stuff, which I do. However, there's more to life than just back roads.
That's true. If you can navigate New York City traffic and come out unscathed, that is like a life skill too, I believe.
Yeah, I'd say I'd like to try that out, but I'd be lying to you because I'm not a city person at all.
It's a different vibe, it's a different energy. We're all kind of go, right? Rushing to go nowhere.
Yeah, absolutely. But enough about where we're at. I think we have some fun today, some value. You are a professional when it comes to speaking. You're a professional when it comes to talking about how to utilize PowerPoint appropriately. I think a lot of the misconception with PowerPoint is, well, everybody hates it because that's the big tool that's used, right? And so when I see a PowerPoint come on, I'm like, all right, get the pillow, let's go.
I know that's my mission, right? How do we avoid death by PowerPoint? And I feel bad because I believe that PowerPoint is a really powerful tool. It was created so you could make your points powerfully, hence the name PowerPoint. But people have misused it. They're now using it like a teleprompter because then everybody puts up like a gazillion bullet points. They start to read it off like line by line verbatim. And this is when you have the problems when people are like, oh dear, it's so they're reading, it's a read along and they're not listening to you speak anymore. And that's when you lose your audience. Whereas, if you use it more as a visual tool, as an aid, you're going to get a lot more buy-in, because why do people come to listen to you to begin with, right? I always think, like, if I'm presenting at a conference, and I do this a lot, people are coming because they already have an interest in what I have to say. You already have a captive audience, regardless whether it's at a conference or whether you're at a meeting. They might not want to be there, but listen, they're there because they have to listen to you or they want to listen to you. And it's you have the information. You are the subject matter expert. And the PowerPoint or Keynote or whatever that you use is just a visual aid to help you tell your story as you present your information. So the point is, how do you make this message stick? Right? So it doesn't just go in one ear and out the other. Because I would be completely flabbergasted and dejected if I put in all this time to go up there and pluck up the courage to speak in front of an audience, only for all of it to fall on deaf ears and nobody remembered a word I said. So that would suck big time.
I mean, I enjoyed PowerPoint in higher education because instead of going to class, I'd print those and learn that and then be good to go. So, I mean, I made it unscathed with PowerPoint, but it also has power to put me to sleep too. So I guess PowerPoint's an appropriate name.
I love that power to put you to sleep. Yeah, that's not what you want, right? I mean, you want, when you have a live audience, that's the thing. You have a live audience in front of you. This is when you want to make sure you can engage them, hook them in, and keep them captivated. So they like leaning in to learn more. They want to know more. That's what they came here to listen to you for, right? So don't waste that time. Don't waste your time, and don't waste your audience's time, because that's the other thing too. And I came about this not because I was brilliant from the start. No, I sucked at the beginning. I committed all the same things that most people do, which is, put up all these bullet points and I'll just talk about it. And we don't realize what it's like for the audience to sit through that, right? And so we're like, oh my God, I just committed the same sins. When you start to fall asleep in presentations, you're like, God, when you're daydreaming, when I escape, and it's like, where's the exit? And you're stuck because you can't go anywhere. That's the worst. And if I'm a speaker and I see people nodding off and sleep, and I like, are there any questions? And that's like crickets in the room. That to me is like, oh, soul crushing, soul crushing.
I think honestly, like, you're right. A PowerPoint is a visual aid to help aid in the overarching conversation as a public speaker and or as an educator. It's how you deliver the message. So like for me, I like to use stories to help grab attention and keep people engaged, because then they're hooked. So it doesn't matter if you have one word on the PowerPoint or paragraphs. I mean, it does matter, but what I'm trying to say is if you can hook the audience in a way where you're engaging as a person, then I don't think it really matters too terribly much, in my opinion.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. Storytelling is one of the best techniques to engage people in your PowerPoint, right? So I like to use it right up front. So, how can you get people wanting to know more? You tell a story. So you can just start out by saying, imagine this. Imagine what would happen if Luke Skywalker wasn't able to defeat Darth Vader. What kind of world would we be living in right now, right? Oh, so, but he did, right? Now, how did he overcome? How did he defeat the dark side, right? And so you kind of paint that picture. And people, when they hear a story, they go, imagine this. They put themselves right in the first person. They put themselves in the hero, right? Nobody wants to be the victim or the villain. So they see themselves in the story, like, how am I going to overcome this? How am I going to shoot the Death Star? How am I going to do this, right? Because there's a journey involved. And that's one of the things that gets people involved, right? Why do you hear a story? You want to know how it ends, right? You have to ask that question, open a loop in the mind. So people go, oh, now can we do it? How can we do it? Show me. And that's how you get them in. So you should always like pose that question, but say, imagine what this would look like, right? How do we get there? Let me show you. Now they're like invested. So you can see like how storytelling is so much more powerful rather than just like, here are some facts, right? Here is data. And data, I tell you, is one of the biggest, this is where a lot of people do lop off and you lose their attention because they look at graphs and data. I'm like, oh my God, what the hell am I looking at? And you've lost your audience if you have too much data and it's just facts and figures. And it's really hard to relate to facts and figures.
Speaking of story time, let's take a step back for a second here, and let's go back to, I say, when you started this journey, and let's help the audience understand who is speaking right now, because we completely just dove right into it without getting some background from, well, you, which is important.
Yeah, so I came from the world of higher education, 15 years, where I was doing a lot of professional development training for adult learners. A good chunk of it was also teaching law enforcement officers. I did a lot of crisis communication. So basically, when I was training them, it was really important for me to make sure that they received my message so that they could apply it. Because the point about crisis communication is like, I need to make sure that you can use your words before you have to use your gun. Right. So for me, that had a big impact in what I had to do to make sure, like, hey, did you get my message? Did this stick? Can you use it? All right. And I want to make sure that, it landed, it resonated, and it made a connection. So that was, what propelled me to make sure that I could be an effective as a trainer, but also then that made sure that when I spoke in public or when I was ever delivering anything, that was a key thing too, right? To also not overwhelm them with too much information. What are 3 things I can impart with you? Just 3 things. Our brains can only take in so much. I always like to say, if you only have a martini glass worth of capacity to take in information, and you have a whole keg's worth of beer, once that martini glass is filled, what a good juju you have after that point, no matter how good, people will stop listening because they're at capacity. So you have to really make sure that, the information that you give them is just enough to fill in that cup. Because once that cup runneth over, poof, it's just wasted information.
And so what got you into public speaking and educating on crises and all of that stuff? Was there something that happened in your life that got you there, or was this just something that you were interested in and wanted to communicate?
Well, it was part of my job. That was part of my job in higher education, training, professional development training, that sort of stuff, just to for adult learners. But also, it required me to do a lot of public speaking. And I don't mind being in the limelight. I'm a bit of microphone hog, limelight hog. So for me, being able to speak on stage and all of that was perfect for my personality, because I did many other things outside of my job that also gave me a lot of chutzpah to get up there to say, hey, I can use the same skills when I'm performing on stage in this life, and also, how do I bring some of the same skill sets over? Because not many people know this about me, but I'll share this with you and your listeners. It's I used to be a burlesque dancer. So, if you know anything about burlesque, you're up there shaking a whole lot of things, whatever God-given assets that you have, to make sure that your audience is engaged with you. And I use those same skill sets with my clothes on to make sure that, and I'm using my words and whatever power of storytelling I have to make sure that my audience is connecting with me, resonating, and that I can see that they're like, oh, did you get that? Would you like me to go on? Okay, let's go.
So just so I'm clear, you're pretty well qualified for being on the stage then, because you have lots of practice.
Lots of practice in different stages, right? I mean, yes. So all of these also, you have to pull in, from whatever's in you. But I think also, be authentic to yourself. Not everybody's as loud and gregarious as I am, but I still believe even shy introverts have a beautiful light in them, that they have a message worth listening to, that they can still portray that, right? You want to be sure that you are authentic to yourself, even if you're a shy person, that people can still see that, because other shy people out there in the audience can go, oh, I'm like this person. And that, I respect that. So again, right, you don't have to be loud and gregarious, but as long as you're authentic to yourself, as long as you know what you're talking about, and you can speak about it with passion and energy, and it's something that lights you up. And I think that makes a big difference as well.
So we were talking before we got to know you, we were talking a little bit and brushed on PowerPoint, and we brushed on public speaking. Now formally, I kind of want to go through and just make sure everybody has kind of a net win from this. So we were discussing in public speaking, having a strategy going in, and one strategy that you and I had brought up was storytelling, because that helps to engage your audience. However, there's plenty of different strategies, and I'm sure you've used them. I know I've had to use them. I know sometimes I can be Captain Monotone when it's on camera or in this podcast, because, well, I take our conversation seriously, but sometimes you have to have a little bit of fun and add some spice too. So I want to continue a little bit on just the structure part of public speaking and how to use PowerPoint in the most appropriate way, so you're not putting people to sleep, obviously.
So I like to use images. If you're going to use PowerPoint, right? So one of the things that our minds react really well to are visuals. So put a full bleed picture of something. But when you're using images, that's a picture tells a million. What's that saying? It's a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? But you don't need to see 1,000 words on the screen. So how do you use that image to evoke a sense of emotion, because people don't remember what you say, but they remember how you make them feel. I'm paraphrasing from Maya Angelou here, but it's so true. So when you put on an image that like is striking, whether it's something that shocks or whatever you put up there should evoke something visceral, right? If I have an emotional reaction to it, that's going to make me remember that. Like I could put up a picture of like a juicy burger with French fries just before lunch, and everybody's going to go, oh, I'm thinking about my stomach. But they're thinking, they're already engaging with their senses. And that's the other thing. Use images that also can, what are the 5 senses that I can evoke? So I'm now like activating that part of their brain, because people remember like your picture, right? And that feeling will give them that long-term memory. So that's one of the key things too, right? You can just put like a whatever picture that you use, but make sure like it's a good image, right? It's high res, it's not pixelated, it's not something that you've blown up, so it's like, you know, or it's got like the watermark on it because you didn't pay for the full. Don't do that. Right? Be professional. Always remember, where am I presenting this so that people will have this full effect. If you are live and you have a big screen, you want that to hit them in the eye and go, whoa, what is this, right? If you're sharing it on Zoom, you can go full screen. People are going to watch and go, wow, right? Again, so be mindful about when you're using images to tell that story, because once people see that image, they're either telling themselves what this image is about, and then you can start narrating, right? Do you see how this picture is, right? And then you start telling the story behind the pictures. And this works for children's books as well. Like, I don't know if you have kids, Dustin, but I have 2 kids. So prior to them learning how to read, they follow along these picture books because they're following the pictures. They're seeing it tell a story as I'm narrating. And you know what? We haven't evolved that much as adults. We're kind of the same too. So you can use the same techniques for storytelling, just using like children's picture books, which is what I like to do. Like, how do I put up an image that tells the story, but also like will arouse emotion that will make them want to lean in to go, wow, what is that image telling me?
One, I definitely do have kids, so I understand what you're talking about for sure. I don't know if she listens, but hey, I do have kids. 2, I like picture books. I don't know why I'm 35-year-old and I can read, but I like picture books.
Me too. My book's full of images, because actually, like, I'm going to tell you, like, you can use these things so you can see for yourself, right? It's like, oh, that makes sense. Because sometimes we're like, if we can't conceptualize certain things, but then we can see a image, we're going to go, now I see what you're saying, right? So you get the picture? Yeah.
See, and I have the photogenic mind as well too, so I can go in and look at like something and then remember it. And so people hated me, and that's okay, because I learn things quicker than most.
That is such a great skill to have. But let me impart something else with your audience. So I also have like a formula that helps people sort of figure out how we can, in sort of the storytelling arc, right? And I call it like the Jedi order. So if you're a Star Wars fan, you're my people. So the Jedi order, JEDI, right? Think about a journey. The J's for journey. What is the journey you want to take your audience on? Because, a journey tells somebody like, oh, I'm going on a trip. That's exciting, right? Rather than like, oh, it's just another boring PowerPoint. But it's like, oh, we're going on a trip. Where are we going? Where's, what's in there? We're going to be doing, right? What are the activities? So, think about a story about a journey. How are you going to get that person into this quest? Right. And then the E is experience. And this is all about the feels. How do you want your audience to feel as they're listening to your presentation, as they're listening to your words, right? What emotions do you want to arouse from them so they'll remember what you have to say, so they have a vested interest and they want to know more? And the D is obviously the destination. Where do you want them to go? What is the end point? What is the end result that you want them to get after they've gotten through all of this, right? Does Luke Skywalker like defeat Darth Vader? How does he do it, right? Does he have the faith in himself that he can actually do it? So, you take him through all of that, the end point, the destiny. Got to know where the end point is, right? Otherwise, it's like, what the hell am I listening to? And then finally, it's the impact. The I is the impact. What action do you want them to take, right? How do you want them to be impacted by your information so that will want to take action? So always make sure that in that impact, you get your audience to take action. Whether it's just at the end of it, you say, hey, how many of you learned something? Raise your hand at this, or take a picture of my information, or down, whatever it is, have a call to action so you know that you've made a lasting impact after you've spoken. And so that's just a quick recap of like my Jedi order of how you can think about putting your presentation to make sure you have all these 4 pieces as you move forward in your presentation.
I think that's easy to remember. So, and if you don't remember it, you have this podcast to listen to, and an easy segue in, you've written a book.
I have written a book. It's called How to Not Suck at Presentations, Transform Your Presentation Skills from Boring to Badass. Because who doesn't want to be a badass, right?
And I think that this book would be important for, I don't know, about 90% of the corporate world to read. So that way nobody falls asleep and your message is being communicated.
Yes. Well, that's the goal, right? Like one presentation at a time.
Right? Take it one step at a time. This is great. I'm going to have a link to the book. You sell it on Amazon, correct? I would imagine.
On Amazon. Yep. And if if your listeners would like, I'll put a link for you too. If they want to read a free chapter of my book, they can do so as well. It's called the C3PO formula. So all my Star Wars fans out there, if you want to know what the C3PO formula is after you just learned about the Jedi Order, I'll link that in the I'll give it to Dustin so he can share that with your listeners as well.
This will be fun. When I post this episode, I'll just use a hashtag of Star Wars and see what we get from that too.
Yeah, right. Let's see how many Star Wars aficionados, nerds will respond, because they're like, oh, I want to know how C3PO can help me with my presentations.
I mean, he knows how to speak all those different languages, so it's pretty relevant.
Absolutely. He knows a thing or two about, getting his message across, knowing, 6 million different languages.
Yeah, exactly. And so segueing back, there's been a wealth of knowledge already, right? With respect to presenting, with respect to public speaking, with respect to not overutilizing PowerPoint in a manner that puts people to sleep. My question to you is, what have you seen? Have you had some of those struggles before kind of becoming this professional, and I use in quotes, badass that you are now? And going forward, what is some good advice that you have for people that want to public speak, people that want to convey their message, people that kind of just are there, but they're not there?
I think make it shorter than you think you need to. I think people give too much information. That's one thing. And it's not because, and it comes from a place of giving and service. I really do believe that, right? People have so much knowledge they want to share and they want to over deliver. But when you over deliver too much information, nothing gets through, right? So I would say, if you think you have like 10 things you want to share with the audience, maybe shorten down to 3. And then the other 7 things you can say, would you like to know more? This is your call to action, right? This is the impact part of it. You know what? Email me this or scan this QR code to get the rest of the 7 things I'll be happy to share with you. Because then you have a captive audience and they're going to come back to you, right? They're going to go, oh, I want to know more. You've got their email addresses and you can nurture them, and then you can talk to them. You have an ongoing relationship. And this is key for any entrepreneur out there. If you're a coach, you're a trainer, you need to get people into your sales funnel. You need to make sure you can a relationship with these people. If they've heard you speak, how do you now continue that relationship? And you want to make sure that you can get a means to communicate with them. So that's one tip I'll share with your listeners.
I am the poster child of over communicating or having too much in a message. My significant half would tell you that for sure, because then she goes crazy with how much I put into something. It's a lot. So yeah, I agree with that 100%. Simplify it.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like with TED Talks, they just have the one thing, right? You just talk about the one thing. And, sometimes it's hard to just talk about the one thing when you have to cover other things. So how do we, subgroup some of those other things to make sure that, we still have our audience listening to us at a point where, oh, I got that. I want more. But if you give too much, and you're like, oh, it's like when they're overstuffed, they don't want any more dessert. That's too much. They've already eaten too much, right? But you give them a little taste. Give them enough that they want to lean in for more.
Always wanted to do a TED Talk, and then I watched them and had to study them in school, and I'd rather do other things than a TED Talk.
There are many ways to be an effective speaker. TED's amazing, right? They have a wonderful audience, but also you have 18 minutes. A TED Talk is 18 minutes maximum. And sometimes when you're engaged to speak at other stages, you have a whole hour, you have 40 minutes. It's a different style, right? So you can always incorporate some of the best things that TED Talks have, which is what I love to do. How do I take in some of the best things? How do I then make sure I can craft it to my audience and the format that it allows me to? Because if you have a platform that engages you, that gives you the time to do like Q&A or forums or we can do some hot seats. That's a different style of communication where you've imparted knowledge, but now you're going to get some people to really do the stuff, right? So it's an open forum. So, how do you use some of those wonderful skills to still get them engaged for a longer period of time?
Absolutely. And again, I thank you for coming on and kind of helping our audience to understand there's more to public speaking, just like there's more to podcasting, right? Than going up to the stage and communicating words. Also, thank you for touching base on everybody's favorite tool, PowerPoint.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Dustin. Thank you so much on being on this wonderful episode of Chopping with Fire. I love playing with fire.
I like playing with fire too. I play with it too much. So anyway, I appreciate you. Thank you for coming on. And if my listeners want to know more, in the episode description, I will have the link for you all to read one chapter of the book. I will have Fern's communication information as well if you want to reach out to her. And as always, y'all can reach out to me as well. So Fern, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again for choosing Chopping with Fire as your premier podcast for anything with regards to business, entrepreneurship, self-development, and smart investment decisions. If you enjoyed the episode as much as we did, please head on over to one of our social platforms and leave us a comment and or add us. We do have a TikTok. We do have a LinkedIn. We have a Facebook, Instagram, YouTube as well. And also, we do have a website. Head on over to www.choppingwithfire.com. That's CHOPPIN with fire.com. And take a look at prior content that we have posted. Lastly, if you guys can, please head on over to your favorite podcast platform and leave us a 5-star rating and review. We love to interact with our fans, and I would love to post responses to your guys' comments. Again, this was another episode of Chopping with Fire.